209. 209 is the number of canonized and beatified Jesuit saints and blesseds. 209. You may have heard of some of the big ones: St. Ignatius of Loyola, our founder; St. Francis Xavier, his college roommate who was a great missionary to the East, St. Peter Faber. 209 in 485 years means about, on average, a new saint or blessed every 2.3 years from the Society of Jesus. Now, we are all, by our baptisms, called to be saints. We are all called to strive for sanctity. And the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits, is a certain path to achieving sanctity. That's what our former Father General Peter Hans Kolvenbach used to say, that it's a certain path. And he would say that meaning both meanings of that word certain. It's a certain path in the sense that it's reliable. If a man gives himself over fully to the life of the vows and following Jesus Christ, that by the witness of these 209, we know it can lead to holiness. But it's also certain in that it's one path among many. Not everyone can be called to be a Jesuit. It's one path in our great multitude of paths within the Church to achieving sanctity. That's the beauty that we celebrate in this November, the diversity within the communion of saints. Now, I'd like to just share the story of two of my favorite Jesuit saints that probably some of the Jesuits here wouldn't even know. Their names are Paul Den and Leo Mangin. Paul Den and Leo Mangin. They were born in France in the 1860s. And after attending Jesuit high school, they decided to enter the Society of Jesus. And they completed their novitiate in France the first 2 years. They went on to studies for a couple years, and then the call went out that missionaries were needed in China. And Paul and Leo volunteered to go to the missions. So they went to Beijing. But unlike their predecessor, Matteo Ricci, who has not been canonized yet, Matteo Ricci wanted to go to the emperor. He wanted to go to the top of society. But Paul and Leo were sent to a tiny village a couple hundred miles outside of Beijing after their ordination. The village is called Zhujiahe. I've actually been there, which is why I have a special devotion to these saints. The village today is almost 100% Catholic, as it was in Leo and Paul's day. It's just a couple hundred people, mostly farmers. And in the year 1900, there was an uprising in China called the Boxer Rebellion. There was a reaction against the influence of Europe, and which was identified with the influence of Christianity in the church. So the Boxer rebels were moving through the north of the country and persecuting especially Christians, even Chinese Christians. And the villagers knew that they were coming. So Paul Den and Leo Mangin had the opportunity to leave, to flee, especially as Europeans. They knew that they would be targets. But they followed the example of Jesus Christ, who humbled himself and came to us in solidarity. They followed his example by remaining with the people, remaining in the village. And at first, they're able to hold off the intruders, but eventually the Boxer rebels get reinforcements. They overcome the city wall, and they're barricaded in the church, 182 villagers and 2 Jesuit priests. And they know that the end is coming. They're battering down the door. So Paul begins to intone the Confiteor, that great prayer calling upon God's mercy. And Leo begins praying the prayer of absolution over the people. But the rebels break in the door, and actually my actual favorite saint, Saint Mary, Ju'u, one of the women, she heroically stands in front of the priest and takes the bullets so that he can finish the prayer of absolution. It's a good reminder that even for us ministers, we can't do what we do without the cooperation of so many other religious and lay people. But almost all of those villagers were massacred. Only a few women and children survived. But Mary Ju'u's daughter survived. And I actually met her granddaughter, the granddaughter of a saint, when I visited that village. These martyrs remind us of the words that Jesus told us tonight. Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains but a single grain. But if it dies, it can bear much fruit. These Jesuits, these martyrs, were able to persevere in following Jesus Christ because of the deep encounter that they had through the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. St. Ignatius teaches us, Jesuits, and all of us, that Jesus wants to encounter you in your life as it is. And Jesus wants to reveal himself to you so that you can know him more dearly, follow him more nearly, and love him more dearly. This Jesus gave the strength to Paul Den and Leo Mangan to persevere in martyrdom. But today we celebrate not just those 209 canonized and beatified Jesuits and blesseds. We also remember those Jesuits, especially for those of us who might have gone to Jesuit schools, those Jesuits that we knew who were holy examples to us. And if they've gone to God, can hope that they are saints, perhaps never to be canonized. I just want to end with a brief story of one of those Jesuits for me. Probably the first Jesuit I ever met was Father James Shaw. He was my professor at Georgetown University. And Shaw, his classes would fill up every semester. You had to get on the wait list early, and he would teach about 50 students political philosophy. And by the second class, he had memorized all 50 of our names, and he would walk around the classroom and he would say, "Mr. Gottschall, what year did St. Augustine die?" And you had to know 430. I still know it. St. Augustine died in 430. So you learned to write the years in the beginning of your notebook. But more than that, he would ask questions like, what is the good? What is justice? What does it mean to live in a community with other people? Deep questions of our human life. He understood, because of his own encounter with Jesus Christ, that what matters is our humanity. Our humanity. He wouldn't teach us to get jobs like other professors. He taught us what it is to live as a human being. And I believe, he's gone to God, that he is a saint. Today we encounter the same Jesus Christ at this altar. Through his grace, may all of us grow in devotion to following Jesus, that we may become the saints we are called to be.